Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Well, it's time for another sage advice from the homestead video. Today, what we're going to talk about is there any value to homesteading? You saw the title, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, I've had some comments about the microphones. About I needed to buy a microphone and this, that, and the other, and I live in rural Kentucky, and there is a constant drone when you live in rural Kentucky from the insects. Now it's been really bad the last little bit because of the cicadas, but now I'm going to take just a second and turn you around here where you can listen, because my tractor shed's right here at the edge of a wooded area, and I want you to hear. Just listen. That is not static on my microphone. That's the way it sounds when you live in a rural area, especially in Kentucky. We have all kinds of insects. It's loud. It happens all the time. It's a consistent drone in the summertime. Okay? So it's not static on my microphone. I am right here in my tractor shed, and you're going to hear birds. You're going to hear the roosters crowing. You're going to hear other sounds that happen on a homestead in rural America in the early mornings, because I do these kind of first thing in the morning. I think, let's see, what time is it? Oh, it is 6:47 this morning. Okay? So I'm out here doing these videos. So, you know, my microphones are what they are. They're good quality microphones, and they pick up all this external sound too, as well as my voice. Now, back in the 60s, there was a movement to move back to rural areas, and people were living in communal communities, sharing the land, working together. The Amish started doing that a long time ago. They've always worked in communities. They've worked together. I'm not saying that the Amish lifestyle is what we should strive for. The Amish have their own problems, okay? Just like we have our own problems. But in the 60s, this movement started, and they called it Back to the Land. Well, that same movement is going on today, except it's more along the individual person rather than a community of people. And that part is called homesteading. And is there any value to that? Well, there could be quite a bit of value. There could be economic value. There could be personal and social value. There could be environmental value. Okay? So let's break down what are the values of homesteading, and is it worth it? Now for the first thing, personal value. We live in a very fast-paced world. We live in a world where everything is happening all at once. We have to multitask. We have to be using our phone while we're driving, while we're out in the garden, while we're doing this, while we're doing that. Why? It generates an incredible amount of stress. A homestead can be stressful, but it's not nearly as stressful as other things. Now, look, if you think that you're going to come to homesteading and quit your job, you're probably not thinking correctly, okay? It's just one of those things. These mosquitoes are getting tough this morning. It's just one of those things. You're not going to be able to quit your job and make your living off of 5 or 6 acres. It's just not going gonna happen. Okay? There are people out there that claims it, but it's not gonna happen generally. So, what's the idea behind homesteading? Well, first off, there's a lot of physical labor. And you want to know something? Physical labor reduces stress. When I was a college administrator, I would come home on the weekends, I was home all week, in the evenings and the weekends when I wasn't working, when I wasn't at the school 16 hours a day. But I would have weekends and holidays and things like that, and I worked on our little half-acre homestead, and that was like having my own therapist. Okay, it lets you forget about the stresses of work, and it improved my mental outlook on things. It kept me happier. So there's a lot of personal value. There's some personal value into a modicum of self-sufficiency. Now, there's no such thing as self-sufficiency. That's a myth. But Crystal and I here, I'm retired, of course, and if I didn't have a retirement income, I'd still be working, okay? Because you can't homestead and make a living. But what happens is I can raise most of the food we eat. I don't raise it all. I'm just going to tell you, there are things that we like. I like a McDonald's hamburger, okay? I like to go to the Chinese restaurant and get the buffet, okay? So we're not self-sufficient, but we're more self-sufficient, okay? We don't have to buy vegetables, generally. Do I buy a bag of broccoli every now and then? Sure. It sure is easy to throw a bag of broccoli in the microwave if you're in a hurry and you just want to get something done. But as far as, for the most part, we don't buy vegetables. We grow our corn and beans and tomatoes and okra and sunflower seeds, and yeah, we grow, and potatoes. I don't buy potatoes. Now, toward the end of the storage season in the basement, my potatoes all have eyes that are a foot long. Well, I don't cook those. You can still cook them though. They're nothing wrong with them. They're just a little soft feeling, and I just don't do that. So we buy a bag or two of potatoes at the end of the year. But other than that, we don't buy many vegetables at all. We grow our own cucumbers and squash and that kind of stuff. Is it above me to buy a hothouse tomato in the winter? Yeah, it's not. I'll buy it. You know, it's nice to have those tomatoes from Brazil. They don't come from America. It's winter here. They come from places like Brazil. Okay? Our winter is their summer. Their summer is our winter. Okay? But it allows us to be a little more self-sustainable. It improves my mental health. Now, I have multiple sclerosis and a couple of other issues. And if I couldn't get out and do anything, my mental health would suffer. I've always been a busy kind of person. I've always had to be working on something, either mathematically or engineering wise or something, you know, but most of it has been physical labor. I love getting out and doing stuff. I know I'm a big fat guy. I've always been a big fat guy, okay? My dad was a big fat guy. His dad was a big guy, all right? It runs in the family. So we've always been big folks, but we've always been active. My dad was a coal miner, and those guys work brute labor, okay? So, yeah, my dad was a coal miner. He was always active, but he was still a big guy. Me too. I've always been a big big guy. Doesn't matter. I've tried every diet known to man, and I'm going to die a big guy. Just the way it is. So, going out and working in the garden really helps my mental health. Building a building like this tractor shed that I'm still working on, doing something like that, it helps my mental health. It keeps me active and it keeps me sharp. Finally, when you homestead, Crystal didn't grow up to this lifestyle, but I did. She's adapted to it really well. She was from Georgia. Her stepfather was in the military, so they were all over the world growing up. So, she didn't learn a lot of those skills that my mother had, but she's learned them over the years with me. So, we have become a great team. So we store, save, can, freeze, dehydrate, a lot of the things that we use, and those are skills that would serve you if something went wrong with the world. And that could happen. This world is a chaotic place, and sometimes it can be a chaotic, evil place. We just have to pay attention to what's going on. Now, what about environmental values? Now, I have always been a very environmentally conscious person. Of course, I'm an educator. When I was a kid, my dad would dig a hole behind a garage or outbuilding or something, and when he changed the oil on his car, he poured it in that hole and let it soak into the ground. That's just what they did. And if you go and you look at popular science in the 60s, there was a popular science article that I read just the other day in the 60s that showed you how to get rid of used motor oil by digging a pit and putting gravel in it, okay, and that kind of stuff. The homesteaders of today are more conscious of that kind of thing. Now me, I recycle my motor oil. Most of the time I burn part of it. Now, burning them is not the perfect way to get rid of them, but it's a better way than just pouring them on the ground. Burning them reduces them to carbon and a few petrocarbons going out into the atmosphere, but it's still better than pouring it on the ground and contaminating groundwater. But when we talk about environmental issues, many homesteaders try to have sustainable lifestyles. In other words, they want to have a lifestyle in which they use less and throw away less. Some of them use special gardening techniques that requires less fertilizer and less water consumption. Okay, they practice those sustainable things that can keep nature coming back over and over and over. They practice permaculture. They raise their own fruit, their own vegetables. So how does raising your own fruit and vegetables help the environment? Well, even if you do it my way, okay, I do standard row crop, but every tomato that you buy at the grocery store has probably traveled 1,500 miles. It took gas, it took people working, it took garbage, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Every tomato, every cucumber, every head of lettuce. So the more you can grow right in your area, the less of those transportation costs are carried out systematically. Reduce carbon footprint. A lot of homesteaders do things like solar. I've actually got plans to do solar. I'm hoping to get to that this fall, but it's been one of those things. It's just life's been tough the last little bit. I'd hope to get to a lot of things this year, and it's just not going to happen. Which, that's the way homesteading is. You work as you can, and when things go to pieces, you stand up to it, and you do the best you can do, and you have to be satisfied with that. But I don't know if doing solar cells and batteries, if that reduces your carbon footprint in reality. Because it took money to build the solar cells. It took carbon to build the solar cells. It took energy to build the solar cells. It took energy to build the battery. It took energy to make the wiring. It took energy, I don't know at what point. Somebody said that solar panels break even at about 10 years with the carbon energy that they save. They break even in about 10 years. So that's possible. But about between 10 and 20 years, you have to start replacing stuff. All right? They have a life expectancy of about 20 years. So you wind up replacing them. So you get 10 years of a reduced carbon footprint. But my carbon footprint's reduced because of all the food I grow as well. It's also reduced because instead of using a gasoline implements, I try to use diesel, which I get more bang for my buck with diesel because I don't use as much diesel. It costs me a little more, but I don't use as much to do the things that I would be doing if I was using gasoline. Land stewardship. When you think about the environment, you have to think about all the other things that are in the environment. I've got several raccoons on the property, okay? And I do not kill them. I have to reduce their populations when they become bothersome to my crops, but if they get 10 ears of corn in a year, I don't care. I grow enough for them and me. But one year they got to be so many that I had to reduce the population by 21. I got 21 out of my cornfield. I didn't get an ear of corn that year because they're greedy. They want it all. They don't want to share. But you have to be a steward of your land. You have to allow for wild spaces. Right here behind the tractor shed, for example. Right back in there. You'll notice that is a heavily wooded space. Okay? In that space, there are walnut trees. There are maple trees. There are food trees for the animals. There's black cherry in there. There's all kinds of trees that mulberries and things like that the squirrels can eat. In my margins, there's walnut trees. I do extensively try to save the walnut trees because they are important to the population of the squirrels here. The squirrels love the maple trees. Okay? So I try and maintain those. I try not to cut down my 300-year-old trees. I like them to be here, and they provide an ecological system of their own within the canopy of my fence rows. I'll make my margins wide. So you got to be a steward of not only the land, but the wildlife that's on your land, the deer, the all that. You got to live in harmony with that. You got to figure out a way to live in harmony with that. And that land stewardship is such an important part of homesteading. Now, are there any social values to homesteading? You know, we think about homesteaders as lonely kind of people. work on their homestead, and they don't interact much with the public and this, that, and the other. But the truth is, the value that homesteaders bring to the social construct is more than what you would think. Homesteaders, for example, love to pass on knowledge. They have classes on how to harvest a pig, how to harvest chickens. And I know you think, well, those guys are just using that to make money. Well, of course they're using it to make money. Everything in our society has to do with making money. If you don't make money, you can't survive. If you don't pay your taxes, you can't keep your property. Nobody owns nothing in the United States, okay? Property taxes are a thing. And if you don't pay your property taxes, they'll put a lien on your property and sell it on the courthouse steps. That's what'll happen in Kentucky. So you got to be able to pay your property taxes. Well, large tracts of land, the way property values are going, large tracts of land have extensive taxes. So yeah, homesteaders have to find ways to make money, especially if they're trying to do this for a living. Okay, there aren't many ranchers or homesteaders or farmers that can make their entire living off of their farm. According to the USDA, 98% of all farms, small farms, not corporate farms, but small farms, have off-farm income. Okay, somebody's working off the farm. The wife's a nurse, or the husband works, or somebody is working a regular day job to help support the homestead lifestyle. Now, for me, this is a lifestyle. It's not something, before it was back to land, my grandpa was doing this in the 1930s, okay? My dad did it. Mom did it. Her mom did it. This is something that's been going on for a long time in Appalachia. But homesteaders can help build communities. Our awareness of the need for more people to get back into this growing your own food. As oil starts to run out, and oil is a finite resource, okay? It's going to run out. So we need to pass on knowledge and keep knowledge in our society about how to grow food locally, okay? When my mom was a kid, they got oranges at Christmas. Through the rest of the year, there wasn't no oranges in Appalachia. Okay? Through the rest of the year, they ate beans and taters. Soup beans and taters. Soup beans and taters. Taters and soup beans. That was their diet. Okay? And cornbread. So, they ate local. They raised local. They ate local. They had flour. I think Mom said that Granny, my mother, was raised by a single mom in the 1930s. Her husband got shot and killed, and she was raised as a single mom, raising two kids in the 1930s. And I think Mom said she bought coffee, flour, and sugar, and bought pinto beans in 50-pound bags. And then she raised the rest of what they ate. All the potatoes, all on that little half-acre place that I made a half-acre homestead out of. Okay, so homesteaders transfer knowledge from one generation to the next. That's their social spot, to transfer knowledge, because, like I said, oil is going to be a finite resource, and it is a finite resource. We're using it. We're probably have already peaked the amount of oil that we use, or we're in the process of peaking now. So the amount of oil available is going to go down, down, down as the years go on. The next social value that homesteaders bring is kind of a revival of cultures that don't exist anymore. The farming cultures where I go over and help them dig their potatoes, they come over and help me harvest my hay. It's a farm sharing culture and a bartering culture. Homesteaders are bringing that to the point that they save money. They don't have to transfer money when they can transfer work, or they can transfer goods. They can trade this for that. You know, if I raise more hay, I can trade that for chicken feed. Okay, you see what I'm talking about? So they keep the barter system alive. So that's a good part of the social construct of homesteading. Okay, the sun is just starting to come up. You see it back here on the back of the thing from over there? The cicadas will start soon, and I'll have to give this up. So let's get on with it. Economic value. Does homesteading bring any economic value? Well, number one, economic value is that it saves me and Crystal money. We eat really well. If I bought equal to the food that we get to eat, no pesticides. Okay, I don't grow organic. I do use fertilizer. Okay, I will use Miracle Grow, but I haven't sprayed anything in my garden. I gave up spraying insects. I gave up any crops that couldn't be made without spraying. They don't grow here. I don't plant them. So I grow all crops that I can make without spraying. Do I get corn earworms? Yeah, I get them. I just break that tip of the corn cob off, and they've had their part, and the chickens get the leavings and the worms. So they get a protein and carbohydrate. So it's one of those things, if I bought that food, it would cost me way more than it costs me to grow it. Especially when I bed my own stuff. You can watch the channel. I bed my own tomatoes. This year, I bedded my tomatoes, and the things going on, it was just going to be impossible for me to get those out of the bed and in a timely fashion. So I actually bought some tomatoes this year and planted them, but I'm going to get some of them out of the bed. We had a storm that tore them up pretty bad, but I've got plenty that I can salvage in the bed, and I will plant those out here in my kitchen garden so that I can get seed back of the heirlooms that I grow. So cost savings, when you save your own seed and that kind of stuff, I don't have to buy seed. I buy seed sometimes every 5 years to refresh the seed that I have and keep some genetic diversity going on in my crops, but for the most part I save all my own seeds and don't have to buy them. A lot of small homesteads have micro enterprises in them. They go to farmers markets and they sell produce, or they sell live plants, or they might sell live animals. They might go to, we have an auction here, and a lot of homesteaders bring their lambs to auction, and that's how they buy the feed for their sheep every year, for all the feed that they're going to do. So they have micro enterprises that inject capital into the local economy that would normally come into the local economy but go straight back out to another place, maybe 1,500 miles away. You know, so they keep local capital inside the local economy. Every dollar that they make circulates within the local economy. They help to create resilience in times of crisis. For example, I want to put solar panels on my freezer system so that if something happens, and not power grid, we're not off grid. Okay, I'm too old for that crap. I'm not off grid, and I don't have any plans to be off grid. I do want to reduce my carbon footprint, and I know that I do that by the things that I buy. Most of the carbon being released into the atmosphere is not released by me and you. Okay? It's being released by energy generation. It's being released by industry and big ag. It's not being released by me and you. Don't think for a minute that you and I are causing this carbon problem. It's not us. Okay? It is a carbon problem, and it is causing the environment to warm. But you and I are not causing it. Now, but homestead does create a resilience. If something happens, I've got enough food here at my house that me and both my boys and my next door neighbor here, we can all eat and not starve to death. It creates resilience. If every homesteader was like that, then they would have enough for their family and 2 or 3 other families in times of crisis. And so they can create a type of resilience within a food system that it would be one of those things like if I had solar, I could keep my freezers going. I would have enough to be able to charge a cell phone. So my neighbors could come over and charge their cell phones if they needed to. You see what I'm saying? They could come over and stay warm at my house. All right, I have an alternative heat source. They could come over and stay warm at my house. So it's one of those things that it could create great resilience in an economy or in a small community. Now, those are all the things that homesteading brings to a community. There are a few caveats that you have to look at. Like homesteading is a lot of costs. Okay, there are a lot of costs involved in homesteading. You have to have a considerable amount of land. You can raise almost all the food you eat on an acre or on a half acre, to be honest. If you had an acre, you could use a half acre for a garden and raise lots and lots and lots of your food. Okay? Could you keep yourself from starving to death? Probably not. But you could raise a large portion of your food right there on your property. But the problem with the back to land movement and the homesteading movement is that land is expensive. The infrastructure on your land is expensive. I've been building on this for 10 years and I'm nowhere near where I need to be to kind of be sustainable. My infrastructure is lacking and I've got to work on that. So, but I don't have a lot of money and most people don't. Okay? The median income does not come close to being enough to just start a homestead. As a matter of fact, the way home prices have gone, median income makes new home ownership unattainable. So it's no different for homesteaders. It costs a lot to begin a homestead. And then there's that risk of being romanticized. A lot of folks want to tell you how great homesteading is, and I did a whole video about the romanticization of homesteading, when in reality, homesteading is tough, and people come into it and don't realize how tough it is. And then there's the thing about scalability. Can homesteading create enough food for the growing population? I did a whole video about population collapse. And can homesteading and sustainable agriculture create enough food for a 10 billion people population in the world? I'm not certain that it can. So, yeah, I think about homesteading and I try to be as realistic and present to you as realistic a thing as possible. Can we pass down knowledge? Yeah, but is it knowledge that we could use to sustain a population of 10 billion people on the planet? I don't think so. Okay, my final thoughts. Homesteading is a valuable component of living. The Back to Land movement has been a valuable component to living. It's a different kind of people that come to this lifestyle. It's not for everybody. It's unattainable for many people. It's just unattainable because of the costs involved or the amount of work involved. You know, disabled people are never going to be able to do this, but they deserve a life and to live as good a life as possible. It is one of those things that it provides resiliency in a local economy. It can provide some safety net to a certain population within a local rural community. It can be a lot of things, but homesteading has value both in its economic and its social and personal health values. It all just depends on your goals. You have to set reasonable, reliable goals and move toward those in your homesteading, always being mindful of the ecological impact that you're going to have on your farm or your homestead. And you have to mind your mental health. Your mental health is important. It drives the way you act, the way you interact with other people. It drives a lot of the things in your life that will be good, but it can also be bad. Rural communities are very close-knit. Sometimes they're very clannish, and it's hard to break in and become a working, functioning member of a rural community. But once you're there 10, 12, 14 years, they start to go, oh, well, he's that old whatever over there. He's all right. He just works every day. He's okay. After they see your work ethic, they get an idea that, oh, okay, he's okay. He's just different from the rest of us. So now, if you like this stuff, this homesteading, do-it-yourself kind of thing, be certain to come on out to the channel and subscribe. We do this homesteading stuff every week, sometimes 1, sometimes 5 videos, just depending on what's going on in the homestead that week. Now, if you hit the little bell, it'll be right up here when you come to the channel. It'll notify you when we upload a video. We upload on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, with the occasional short on Friday and through the week and Saturday. So now, it's time for me to get on to the next thing. I love you all.